They are the 25th seed in this bracket. They go up against the 8th seed, the 2001 World Series, arguably the greatest World Series of all time, and we will argue about it, I promise you that. Between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the New York Yankees, that series went the distance, 7 games, and climaxed in the bottom of the 9th in game number 7, in which the Diamondbacks won on a walk-off single, coming back from down 2-1 to win 3-2. I will vote for it first here. This is an easy Arizona-New York one for me, World Series 2001 parade. Expansion team to defeat the New York Yankees. Such a perennial powerhouse, prevent them from going for that three-peat is absolutely incredible, and to do it in walk-off fashion in the bottom of the 9th in Game 7, easy 2001 World Series for me. Let's go to Chris.
Yeah, I think the World Series one has to be an easy pick because when you have a team, a heavy-hitting team like the Yankees who are just starting to become that great team again, and you have just the Diamondbacks, people, who the heck are the Diamondbacks? And they won that in the most dramatic fashion, and I think that's huge. And even though Celtics-Lakers always gets huge ratings, I think, the way the World Series played out with the walk-off at the end, that has to be the winner, I think.
Are we going to have a sweep prevented? Brendan, you were pretty high on the Celtics-Lakers series. Are you going to go with them here?
I'm going to go with them here because you just can't mess with the Celtics that season. They had KG, they had Rondo, they had Pierce. They had a really, really good team, and especially against the Lakers. There had been Celtics-Lakers finals in the past, and this Celtics-Lakers final was easily one of the better ones.
Yeah, you will remember in Game 2, the Celtics had a 24-point lead. The Lakers cut that all the way to 2 with 38.4 seconds to go. They ended up losing that Game 2 to go down 2-0 in the series. And of course, then it was the Celtics who came back from down 24 points in Game 4 and ended up winning. Noah, what do you think?
Look, I think both of them are great series. And I think that Celtics team was great, especially because they hadn't won in many years. And then, they put together that team, bringing in guys like KG, bringing in guys like Ray Allen. You complete a very iconic team. And, of course, you got the big three and then the underrated Rondo at that time, who has gone on just to be a mess, to be honest, since that team kind of dissipated. And I got to go with the 2001 New York Yankees. I think that team was terrific. I think that the way they came into that game with such terrific players, and they lost to a team like the Diamondbacks, who, while they had Randy Johnson, like Chris said, it's the Diamondbacks. It's not a team you normally think of that would beat a powerhouse like the Yankees. And they did it through great pitching, through a great team, and I think it was overall an amazing series, and one that will go down in baseball lore as one of the greatest.
It's gone down as one of the greatest, and that's why it's moving on. Carl, are you happy with this result, or would you have gone with the 2008 NBA Finals?
I absolutely agree with everything said, and I want to bring up one more point. Brendan earlier brought up 9/11, the Patriots Super Bowl, but this was even fresher when you're looking this close to it, and that, if you want to talk about the magnitude around that, well, I will have some dispute later on if we want to talk about this as the greatest World Series, and I'm sure it'll be a good argument. This is easily one of the top 2 of the century and top, 3 or 4 of all time. I've got no question in my mind this easily makes it through.
Yeah, the Yankees 3 home games there. They won Game 3 2-1. They won Game 4 after scoring 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th and winning it in the bottom of the 10th 4-3. And then again in Game 5, they scored 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th to tie it and scored the winner in the bottom of the 12th 3-2. A roller coaster of a series. That's why they win it 4-1 and will move on. They face the winner of this matchup, the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals and the 2005 NBA Finals. The 05 NBA Finals went 7 games as well. This was the San Antonio Spurs and the Detroit Pistons. It did go 7 games, and you did get that classic Game 5, an unforgettable one in which the Spurs were able to pull it out 96 95, which ended up giving them a 3-2 series lead. Of course, they'd go on to lose Game 6 and win Game 7. But is that better than the 9 seed in the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals? This one was between the Boston Bruins and the Vancouver Canucks, which also went 7 games. The Canucks won each of the first 2 games by a goal, including Game 2 in overtime. All the Bruins wins seem to be blowouts. In Game 3, they won by 7. In Game 4, they won by 4. The Canucks won 1-0 in Game 5. The Bruins won Game 6 5-2. Won Game 7 4-0, setting off riots across the city of Vancouver and creating one of the most iconic sports-related photographs, simply titled "The Kiss," in the middle of the riots and ruins of Vancouver. The 2011 Stanley Cup Finals and the 2005 NBA Finals. Carl, we'll let you start this one.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to the Stanley Cup Final, especially with the aftermath of that. But also, you got to remember, Canada just hasn't had a Stanley Cup in a very long time, and a lot of people thought that was the one. A lot of people thought that Canucks team was going to bring one home. And you know what? Especially with that idea around there, I think it was a fantastic series. And yeah, that's what my vote goes.
All right, 1 point to the Bruins Canucks series. Brendan?
You can add 1 to the Stanley Cup Final. That was the first time the Bruins had won the Stanley Cup since 1972, I believe. And I remember, as I always do as a Bruins fan, being now that the Bruins haven't really done as well since they went into this 2013 Stanley Cup Final. Remember that 2011 Stanley Cup Final as being one of the better ones, especially Game 7. Just watching the Bruins go out there in Vancouver, just shut out the Canucks just to bring the cup back home to Boston.
Or nothing. It's fair to say it might have been a bit anticlimactic in Game 7. It's one of the few series where you could argue that the climax came after the series was over in those riots. 2-0 right now in favor of that Stanley Cup. Noah, you going to make it a sweep here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to. You look at the run that Boston had. It's not just winning the final in 7. It's that they won the conference final in 7. They won their first round series in 7. And they, of course, swept Philadelphia. However, it's still an incredible run. And I was happy to see Vancouver lose after they beat the Blackhawks in 7. So, a little happiness there. One of the few times I've been a fan of the Bruins in a Stanley Cup final. But, yeah, I like this series. I think it deserves to get another point.
All right. Chris, you can make your vote here short and sweet. I don't think there's going to be any surprises.
Yeah, of course. I got to pick the Bruins. Look, one thing I'll say is that series was nasty. And in my opinion, if you're a real hockey fan or if you're a classic hockey fan, you like nasty series. And Tim Thomas versus Alex Burrows, Burrows versus Bergeron, I mean, it was nasty. And I think that added to the fun of the 2-0 comeback and going to 7 games. I think that had a lot of value in terms of, on top of the competitive matchups, the pushing and shoving and the grit.
Yeah, and while Game 6 and Game 7 were blowouts, I think that can be salvaged by what happened early on. In Game 1, Rafi Torres scored with 18.5 seconds left to score the only goal of that game. In Game 2, Alex Burrows scored 11 seconds into overtime to get the fastest overtime goal in Stanley Cup history. And another 1-0 win. That also came in the third period of Game 5 for Maxime Lapierre. So Vancouver's wins were tight. They only won 3 times, though. Boston won 4, including on the road in Game 7. A 5-0 sweep for the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals. They move on in the winner's bracket. The 4 seed versus the number 29 seed. You're talking about perhaps impending arguments about the best World Series ever. This one has a lot of people in its corner. The 2011 World Series between the St. Louis Cardinals, the Texas Rangers, the Cardinals in that dramatic Game 6. It's been said to be one of the greatest games in the history of baseball, maybe the single greatest in the history of baseball, in which they won 10-9, were down to their last strike twice, and somehow came back. They went to Game 7 and ended up winning that game. that's a pretty tough match to go up against if you're Super Bowl 47, but that's the task it has to do. Is it impressive enough? Super Bowl 47 featured the year after the Patriots-Giants rematch. This was between the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. Two brothers head coaching against each other. The Har Bowl, the Bro Bowl, whatever you wanted to call it. The Blackout Bowl, even. San Francisco almost mounted a huge comeback in the end. Baltimore won by 3, running out of time late in the game after the punter held onto the ball, ran out of the back of the end zone after scurrying around to concede a safety by the time it was kicked off. No time was left. Baltimore won that game 34-31. Intriguing storylines in both games. Chris, who do you have?
I would have to go. I remember watching the Super Bowl, and the first half was a bit of a blowout. The Ravens were kind of dominating, and I remember watching the 49ers come back. It seemed a little bit hopeless to me, and for that reason, I think the 2011 World Series gets my vote. And also, that Game 6 had to be the single greatest game in World Series history. You never see a team down to their last strike come back and win the game and win the series like that. Guys will just swing and say, get me the hell out of here. So I think that was an incredible, heroic effort from David Freese, and the World Series gets my vote.
It should be remembered also, Albert Pujols had a pretty good performance himself. This was a 16-7 victory in Game 3. And Pujols went 5 for 6 with 2 singles, 3 home runs, 4 runs scored, and 6 RBIs. So you also had a superstar performance as well in there. Well, I think that I'm always for a good storyline, and I think two brothers going at it, and the blackout and all that just adds to the intrigue and the legend of that game. I don't think it comes anywhere near to what Game 6 did for that entire World Series, so I will also vote for the 2011 World Series. Noah?
Oh, yeah, 2011 World Series for me. I remember a while ago, a couple weeks ago, me, Jake, and Carl were talking about this. We actually kind of were like looking at this kind of thing, looking at some of the best championship series. And the 2011 World Series definitely heavily supported by me and Carl. Not so much Jake, but I think this is one of the classic series, and I've got to go with that one.
All right, we're going to, since this match has been decided and there's still a lot to get to, I'm just going to ask for one-word answers from Carl and Brendan. Carl?
David Freese, not even close.
More than one word, but I'll take it. I'm just kidding. Brendan?
World Series.
All right, there we go. 5-0, that World Series wins. And it looks like we're weeding out the underdogs here. And it's not looking like it's going to be anything close. The only thing not to win in a sweep was the 2001 World Series over the 2008 NBA Finals. Now we get something more recent. The 2013 Stanley Cup Finals, the 20th seed. This was a matchup between the Boston Bruins and the Chicago Blackhawks. This came at the tail, really right after the... Not right after, but it was the first Stanley Cup after that Boston Marathon bombing. And in Game 6, the Chicago Blackhawks put off a 1-2 punch in the final 2 minutes to absolutely stun the Bruins and take it in 6 games. And yet, that's the underdog in this matchup, because they're going up against the number 13 seed Super Bowl 43 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Arizona Cardinals. What a fun one this was, if you can remember it. This was between, again, the Arizona Cardinals, Pittsburgh Steelers. 27-23, the Steelers won it. Santonio Holmes getting the game-winning catch and barely getting both feet down. So, the Super Bowl 43, 2013 Stanley Cup. Carl?
Honestly, for me, I think that while the other series was good, and that's one of the better games and greatest couple minutes in recent history, it still has to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, that was